Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. Listen, I'm glad to have you guys here. I'm going to get right into it. I am going to show you guys the most wonderful Bitcoin chart that I've seen in a while, because it shows you a lot of the things that I've been actually saying to you guys on here. Let's get started. And, well, here it is. Here's the chart. I got it right here. I'm so used to opening up the charts. I'm doing this a little bit different. I got the chart here the whole time. Anyway, let's get right into it. You see the black line? That goes back when Bitcoin started. We see it was down at the bottom. And if you look at it, you'll see you can count them. The first rise in price is this little, where it went almost straight up, and then it peaked, and then it fell a little bit. It's hard to see it even. But that was the first rise and fall in price. So there's one, and then you can see it rose up in price again. It fell off. That was two. And then you can see third one here. Three. And then a huge one. It really spiked in price. Went way high and spiked in price. That was four. And then another small one and another small one. That's six. And then a big one, another big one. Let's just count the big ones. Not the smaller falls in price, but the big, when Bitcoin goes into a bubble. How many times has it actually went into a bubble? Well, what I'm looking at right here is more or less about 4 or 5 times in the past. It's went into a bubble. And then it always falls off. Well, you can see right now it's not in a bubble, but the second thing I really want to point out about this chart is Bitcoin's spectacular rise in price. Even though it goes into a bubble and the bubble pops and you see a significant fall off in price, it disappoints everyone, and everyone goes through this same feelings of anxiety and everything, and they always say Bitcoin's going to die now and it's going to become worthless, and they go on and on and on whenever a bubble pops. Still, if we look at the overall scheme of things, and we go back all the way from its start to now, all we see is a straight line almost heavenward. I mean, this thing is basically, it looks like the biggest bull market in the history of the world ever since its inception till now, with no sign of abating. No sign of a ceiling to the price either. What is the ceiling to the price of Bitcoin? How can you say a Bitcoin has to stop? Oh, it has to stop at $100,000. Or it has to stop at $1 million, or it has to stop at whatever number. It just charges right on through it. And so what we're seeing here is a parabolic increase in price. This thing, since its very beginning, has always been to the moon. That's basically it, right? But here's a point I want to make. These orange bars down at the bottom. Now you see the ever-increasing orange color. They get a deeper and deeper shade of orange, and they move up and they become yellows, and in the end they become almost a yellowy blue, and at the very top they become like a blue, and then a deeper and darker blue. What those lines indicate is how quick is Bitcoin moving through the network. How many are being sold out there? How many people are selling coins? Well, the more they're selling coins, the more orange you see. And the deeper the orange means the more that they're using coins in transactions and trying to sell and buy things in commerce with Bitcoin. And what you notice here, going back when the price was a lot cheaper, you notice that the deeper, darker orange was heavier and thicker when Bitcoin was only like $50 or whatever. Now, as we move forward in time, you see this orange slowly decreasing off of the board. Now, sure, when Bitcoin goes into a parabolic bubble, if we look directly under the last bubble where it went to $20,000, and that's the black line that touches the top of the page. See where the black line touches the top of the page? That's when Bitcoin was $20,000. Now look directly below it, you'll see an increase in the orange corresponding to the massive price increase of Bitcoin. So people are spending them. Basically, people are profit taking and stuff. So this is increasing the amount of orange. But what you'll notice is when Bitcoin price fell, you'll notice that the orange fell off and the blue increases. So when Bitcoin price was falling, we seen the blue starting to increase a little bit. Now, what that blue is, the blue effectively up there is when people are hoarding them. So, the more people are spending them, the more orange and yellow we get in this chart. The more people are hoarding Bitcoin, and the more people are not selling them and they're not moving, the more blue we get. Now, look, go all the way back and look at the blue now. What do you see? You see it's a descending chart. It's actually, there's getting more blue on the page. Now, if we expanded this chart out into the future for another 5 or 10 more years, you'd see this blue would exponentially increase. This is the amount of hoarding that's going on. People not selling their Bitcoin. People keeping them in their wallet. People using them as a safe haven investment. We're going to see an exponential increase in this blue, and you can already see it happening. You can see the blue as we move forward in the chart. You can see the blue expanding. This will continue to expand. As it continues to expand, you're going to see the orange and yellows decrease, less. I hereby contend that if we were to move into the future 5 or 10 years, that you would see the blue would take over the whole chart and there wouldn't be any orange and yellow left. And the orange and the yellow basically are the part of the chart that determine how many transactions are moving through the network at any given time. So actually what we're seeing is a phenomenon occurring here that as Bitcoin exponentially grows, we're going to actually see network transactions drop off. Less and less network transactions. And so, with less network transactions, well, let's face it, going back to when Bitcoin first started in its very infancy, it was only running on 1 or 2 computers. 3, 4, later it was 3 or 4, 5 computers, 10 computers. It kept expanding that network. But when it first started, you could send those Bitcoins back and forth really fast. The guy that bought the pizza, he probably sent those Bitcoins in like 5 seconds. First confirmation, it was done. But the network was only a couple, that was way back in 2009 or 2010. And the computers that they were working with, if you guys remember, back in 2009, 2010, we were working with those old like Pentium 1s, Pentium processors. They were like, talk about slow, and that's what Bitcoin was running on. It was only running on just a handful. You could probably count how many computers with your fingers, how many computers it was running on back when the network first started. But it ran fine. It ran great. So this argument about Bitcoin needing more and more computing power all the time, that argument doesn't hold water. Bitcoin needs more computing power because of the size of the network, but as network transactions drop off, so does the amount of computing power that's needed. We might have saw the peak already in Bitcoin transaction volume. And going by this chart would say that what I'm saying is true, that we've already saw the peak in network transaction volume, or we're near the peak now. We might actually get back up to the peak again when we get near the top of this bubble, because if what you notice is, it's rising. The orange right now is actually starting to rise again against the blue. There's a little bit of a bubble here. You notice it's moving upwards. It started moving upwards back when we peaked last time, and it hasn't stopped. So there is still a lot of network transaction volume. But it's going to start to decrease as Bitcoin price moves extremely high, and people start to realize, once that realization starts to hit everyone out there, that Bitcoin's a place to store money, voluminous amounts of money. Once this actually hits the world, and they actually see this as being the new version, Gold 2.0, and this is the Internet of Money also, and Bitcoin opens the door into all of these other digital blockchain currencies. So an awful lot of people, if they're going to move into any one of these other alternative blockchain currencies, if they want to buy, say, Litecoin, my favorite coin, generally they buy Bitcoin and then transfer it into Litecoin. Bitcoin is the de facto. It is what you compare the value of all these alternative currencies against. It's like the US dollar of crypto. The world is moving into crypto and moving in very fast. So as we see it going along, we see this blue increasing. If we move this chart out into the future, what we'd see is the blue would take over the entire chart. And when that blue takes over, then there's very little transaction volume on the network. They don't really need all of the computing power that they already have. It's overkill. What's happening is you've got an awful lot of miners out there, and they're competing for those coins. They're putting more mining power into the network than's needed for the transaction volume. Far more. Probably exceeds it by 100 times. So you could probably go out there right now and snip 99% of the miners off and switch the mining machines off, and the network would still function. So it's all like a waste. It's all just competitors competing for those same amount of coins and throwing in all of that hashing power, basically, and trying to compete for those coins faster and faster. But it's got nothing really to do with how much computing power they need to make the transactions. So you could probably trim off 99% of it and still run the network. So what we're seeing here is we're seeing something where they've only created 21 million. It's debatable whether there's even 17 million of them left out there right now. And they're not going to create too many more. And because of this scarcity factor, we're going to see the price continue to rise. With fall-offs, you can see a number of fall-offs here. But you're going to see the price continue to rise. And this move that we just had up to about 13,000 something. It's moving so fast I can't keep up. Last time I looked, it was 13,000 something. Might be 14,000 by now. This move up we have, though, when compared to this chart, you can see that it's just basically we're moving into the next surge upwards, and the next surge upwards is going to be bigger than the last one. You can see we're just beginning it. We're just beginning it right now. We're in the initial stages of it. Even though it's moving rather quickly, it is moving quickly, but we're only in the beginning stages of it. Probably what we'll see is we could any time now, maybe at 15,000, 16,000, we could see a little drop-off for a few weeks or a couple months, maybe a drop-off of 1,000 or two, and then it'll start to surge upwards again, But we're in this upward trend. We're going to trend upwards probably, I'm just going to guess, but considerably higher than our old peak, probably. It's hard to know when it's going to fall off big time again. Its next big fall off. But looking by these loops, you can almost see a wave pattern here. And this is another thing I like about this chart. It almost tells you, if you're a charting person, you study charts, like I study all day long. That's what I do. For the past years and years and years, I just look at charts all day long. About 4 hours a day I spend looking at charts. And that's why I love this chart so much. One of the things about this chart is it gives you the whole thing. You can basically see the wave pattern here. And it's basically whoosh, whoosh, and then we're into this next whoosh, And so this next whoosh is we're not even halfway into it yet. This next whoosh upwards. Going by this, unless it does something completely different than it's been doing since its inception in 2009. If it continues to do what it's been doing, judging by past previous experience, we're only about a third of the way into this whoosh upwards. 1/3 of the way. And toward the end of the whoosh upwards is when you get the biggest moves. Toward the end of it. That's when it goes parabolic, right toward the end. And you can look on this chart, you can see at least 4 times here, right toward the end, it goes parabolic, almost straight up. Well, we're moving up pretty fast right now, but you can also see that we're only about a quarter, or maybe half at the most, way into it. And the last bit, the parabolic bit's when you get your most gains. But it's also the hardest point for you to judge that top in order to sell near the top. Because it will fall off again. Smart money will be able to take advantage of that. They'll sell off right when it's at its peak or just after its peak. And they'll sell off, and then they'll wait until it goes down to the bottom of the next valley, and then they'll buy back in, you know, and they will get more Bitcoins out of that than they have now. They will increase their amount of Bitcoins. But that's what I see in all of this. Very interesting. Thank you guys for listening. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.